The boy let the girl bite his neck. And the result was that he himself ended up nailed inside a coffin with a wooden stake. The reason was that the girl had been different from others since birth. Her parents warned her never to let anyone see it. Otherwise, everyone would think she was a vampire. Hearing this, the girl became afraid as well, afraid that she truly might be a vampire. But nothing stays hidden forever, and her strange behavior only drew more suspicion. Until one day the boy finally approached her. He asked, "Are you really a vampire?" Seeing the girl turn her face away and refuse to respond, the boy smiled and held out his hand. "My name's Chris, and I think this is the first time I've ever seen you outside during the day. So what's your name?" Hearing that, the girl simply let out a cold snort. The boy pressed on. "So, your name is Humph?" That almost made the girl lose her temper on the spot. In truth, the boy already knew her name was Soo-hee because she was well known in the area. Everyone said she was the newly arrived vampire. Those words were met with Soo-hee's fierce rejection. Still, Chris found the situation strange as well. He had heard that she had moved several times and never went out during the day, that she wandered around at night and even caught pigeons to eat when she was hungry. Soo-hee shouted back that at least the last part was absolutely untrue. Chris knew perfectly well that these were all rumors, but he couldn't understand why Soo-hee stayed inside during the day and never explained herself to others. Hearing this, Soo-hee felt troubled too. She had tried to explain before, yet no one believed her, and she herself didn't even know whether she truly was a vampire. Seeing her like this, Chris said, "I believe you're not a vampire because I was born with a limp. So I know that when someone feels different from everyone else, they become afraid of socializing, and people will gather to talk about that special person. I once heard others say that my parents regretted having me, and that made me afraid it might be true. But in reality, my parents love me deeply, so you shouldn't let random words from others affect you either. Then, let's be friends." Looking at this boy, someone in a similar situation to herself, yet so bright and cheerful, Soo-hee gladly accepted his invitation. It was the first time Soo-hee had ever had a friend. They talked and laughed together, played together in the river, and hung up laundry while watching the sunset. At last, Soo-hee couldn't hold it in anymore and told Chris her secret. Chris only thought her ability was really cool, and firmly believed she wasn't a vampire. Even Soo-hee herself found it hard to believe, because she was still afraid that she truly might be one. Chris noticed the worry in her heart and said to her, "Why don't you bite my neck?" Hearing that, Soo-hee panicked at once, but Chris continued, "It's okay that I trust you." Still, Soo-hee was filled with fear. What if something really went wrong? Chris immediately said that she didn't have to do it now. "When you feel that I truly believe you, or when you believe that you're not a vampire yourself, then you must bite me." Only then did Soo-hee relax and smile, savoring every moment she spent with Chris. Until one day, a fire broke out at Chris's home. Without a second thought, Soo-hee rushed straight into the flames. She knew that once she used her ability, it would only make others believe even more that she was a vampire. But she couldn't care anymore. She no longer wanted to be controlled by other people's rumors. Beneath the ruins, Soo-hee found Chris, barely clinging to life. Heavy reinforced concrete was lifted effortlessly by her hands. "Soo-hee, you came to save me. And no matter what others say about you, I'll believe you. Someone as kind as you could never be a vampire." In the end, Soo-hee still bit into Chris's neck. And so, Chris was nailed inside a coffin and Soo-hee lost her dearest friend. From that day on, she hated vampires more than anyone else. And so, with outstanding grades, she transferred to Desolar Academy. It was the finest aristocratic academy in Littlefield, and it strictly barred vampires. At last, she was free from the stigma of being called a vampire. Yet she still couldn't forget the look of absolute trust in that boy's eyes back then. After some self-reflection, Soo-hee began cleaning and arranging her room. Just as she lifted the entire bed, she saw a boy who had suddenly appeared. Soo-hee hurriedly explained that she wasn't a vampire, but the thought that no one would believe her shattered the fragile confidence she had just built. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. However, the boy said, "I believe you. After all, our school's entrance inspections are extremely strict." Hearing this, Soo-hee felt deeply grateful for his understanding. Then her tone turned serious. "I really don't want to be mistaken for a vampire anymore, because I hate vampires more than anyone in this world." Hearing this, cold sweat beaded on the boy's forehead. But Soo-hee's expression soon brightened again. Here she no longer had to worry about being misunderstood. The boy could also tell that Soo-hee must have gone through a lot before this. Then Soo-hee said that everything was because of vampires. Cold sweat broke out on the boy once more. In fact, Suhi had heard from her parents that before she was born, vampires had existed only in novels, and she couldn't understand why they had suddenly appeared in reality. At this point, the boy's expression gradually turned serious. Not long after, Suhi noticed the book the boy was carrying. Using the book as a topic, the two of them chatted for a while longer. Since she usually had no friends to talk to, Suhi ended up talking a lot. Eventually, she started to worry that the other person might find her annoying. But after learning that wasn't the case, Suhi handed the book back to the boy. The boy took the book, gave a brief farewell, and left. Only then did Suhi realize she hadn't even asked his name. Suddenly, the door opened again. Standing outside, the boy asked Suhi what her name was. The sudden wave of happiness nearly made Suhi dizzy. She repeated her name several times in a row. After that, the two fell into silence. A moment later, the boy asked, "Don't you want to know my name?" Only then did Suhi snap back to her senses and quickly ask his name. The reaction made the boy feel a little awkward, but he still said that his name was Heli. After exchanging a few more polite words, he turned and left. Heli walked down the corridor, when suddenly a red-haired man caught up to him calling out, "Brother Heli." His name was Gino, and behind him were Sean with blonde hair, Soren with blue hair, and Ian with gray hair. After learning that Heli planned to befriend a human, Soren was the first to voice his opposition. The group began discussing things through their thoughts, but Heli did not take the suggestion to heart. He felt that Suhi was different. She gave him a sense of familiarity as if she were much like himself. Gino argued that if she were of the same kind as them, there was no way she could have entered this school. Heli knew very well that Suhi was not one of their kind, yet there was something about her that drew him in. Hearing this, Sean teased, "Brother Heli, don't tell me you've fallen for her?" But the idea was immediately shot down by Soren. "That kind of feeling is impossible for us, and forbidden. Even if we try to get along with humans, they will eventually." Ian also said that getting too close would only put Suhi in danger. After hearing everyone's opinions, Heli let out a quiet sigh. A moment later, Soren emphasized again, "In short, from now on, none of you should get too close to that transfer student." At some point, Suhi was already standing behind them. Just as Heli and the others were discussing keeping their distance from Suhi, she happened to overhear the final part of their conversation. She lowered her head in shame, never expecting to be rejected so quickly. Ever since she was little, it had always been like this. Because of her abilities, people assumed she was a vampire and no one wanted to play with her. She had thought that since there were no vampires here, things would be different, but she still couldn't escape it. She assumed the looks in their eyes would be just like those of the people from her past. Yet that wasn't the case at all. Their gazes held hints of surprise and awkward guilt instead. Being stared at like that made Suhi feel uneasy. Sean was the first to step forward, greet her, and introduce himself. His enthusiasm left Suhi momentarily flustered. Thankfully, Gino quickly pulled him aside. While bad-mouthing Sean, he introduced himself as well. Sean glared at him from the side. "Hey Gino, don't smear me like that. I'm Ian." He wiped his hands, then politely extended one towards Suhi. "Hello, my name is Ian." Naturally, Suhi happily returned the greeting. Suddenly, Ian spoke up. "Don't take what Soren said earlier to heart. None of us agreed with it." Soren ground his teeth. "That's not what you were saying during the discussion just now." Suhi had noticed him as well. As expected, this guy really did dislike her, and he had even said those things earlier. Soren turned his head away in a huffy, prideful manner. Although Suhi felt a small pang of disappointment, it was still far better than what she had endured before. She had no idea how Heli had introduced her earlier to make them treat her so warmly. Soren stood there awkwardly, waiting for someone to invite him along. Yet no one paid him any attention. Instead, Heli was the first to ask Suhi where she was headed. After learning that she wanted to familiarize herself with the campus, the others immediately chimed in, saying they would go too. Of course, Soren couldn't swallow his pride. Someone had to personally invite him before he would move. So the group first took Suhi to tour the library. Suhi was actually more interested in the kind of books Heli had been holding, but Heli told her that those required special approval to read. In the end, he could only placate her, saying that he would tell her about them after he finished reading. While showing her around the campus, Sean also introduced everyone's background. He said that he and Suhi were both in 10th grade, Ian and Gino were in 11th grade, Soren didn't specify his year, and Heli was in 12th grade. Hearing this, Suhi found it a little strange. "You're not even in the same grade, yet you're all so close, that's really amazing." The remark left everyone a bit embarrassed. After a short pause, Helly explained that they had grown up together. Their parents were gone and they had all come from the same orphanage. Only then did Suhi understand, and she apologized for her thoughtless comment. The others felt relieved as well. Before long they arrived at the sports field. Gino mentioned that there were two good friends of theirs on the court. Since they cared deeply about the league, they were still practicing. So he was about to ask more about the league, when Ian's gaze suddenly sharpened and something was shattered in an instant. The others reacted just as quickly, closing in to shield Suhi protectively. A closer look revealed that it was a soccer ball kicked over from the field. A white-haired boy and a purple-haired boy came running over, the two being Zaka and Noah from the group of 7. Seeing that it was Gino, they quickly apologized and hurried away. Only then did Ian turn back to ask if Suhi was all right. At that moment, Helly was holding Suhi close. The next second, Suhi sprang backward as if launched by a spring. Her face flushed red as she repeatedly thanked them. Before Helly could finish speaking, she quickly ran off. The others simply assumed she had been frightened by the ball just now. Back outside the dormitory, Suhi's heart was pounding wildly. After all, it was the first time a boy had ever shielded her like that. Suddenly, a voice calling from behind snapped her back to her senses. It was Soren, the blue-haired boy, that he asked, "Do you know my name?" Being stared at so directly made Suhi uneasy, but she still answered his name timidly. Hearing it, Soren's expression turned complicated. He let out a huffy snort and turned as if to leave. Suddenly Suhi called out to him, "Thank you for earlier." Soren looked at her, clearly confused. Suhi explained that when the soccer ball had flown over, it was he who pulled her out of the way. At that, Soren immediately grew flustered. "That wasn't helping you, your clothes just had dust on them, I was only brushing it off." Suhi gave him a knowing look, choosing not to say it out loud, and then thought about suggesting that they get along better from now on. But before she could finish, Soren cut her off. "Don't even think about being friends with us anymore. We won't be friends with other people, especially you." Suhi nearly died of embarrassment on the spot. What she didn't know was that Soren still had things he couldn't bring himself to say. She gave him a strange feeling, a kind of inexplicable attraction. To rein in those impulses, he dropped those harsh words and strode away. Hearing that, tears welled up in Suhi's eyes. The sight of it stunned Soren instead. Suhi said softly, full of grievance, "I understand, I won't even greet you anymore." At that, Soren panicked. She had taken it too far. He blurted out, "It's not that you can't greet us, just don't talk so much. Telling you not to get too close to us wasn't because I dislike you." But halfway through, Soren hesitated, then turned away. "Forget it, I won't say any more. Those guys wouldn't listen to me anyway, so don't take what I said too seriously. I'm leaving. Good night." Hearing the word good night, Suhi put on a smile again and said her farewell to Soren as well. Time quickly passed and morning arrived. Today was Suhi's very first day of classes at Desolar Academy. Unexpectedly, she ran into Helly the moment she stepped outside. "Suhi, let's walk together." Suhi looked at him, momentarily confused. As they walked, Helly said, "I wanted to go to class with you. Didn't we say we'd be friends?" Suhi assumed he had come over because he was worried she might feel awkward. She hadn't expected Helly to be so popular, but thinking about it, it made sense. He was handsome and gentle. Noticing her unease, Helly leaned closer to her ear and whispered, "Do you feel uncomfortable walking with me?" Hearing that, Suhi hurriedly explained, "No, not at all. That I was actually worried you'd feel uncomfortable because of me. After all, you've all been friends since childhood. That you'd probably dislike someone suddenly barging in, right?" Helly immediately realized that Soren must have spoken to her, and he explained that Soren hadn't meant any harm. Helly then asked whether Suhi had any questions, but suddenly fell silent. In the next instant, a voice echoed inside Suhi's mind, "Because we have a secret." Suhi was so shocked she couldn't form proper words. Helly explained that it was telepathy. "I'm telling you our secret now because I trust you." After that, Helly returned to normal and told Suhi to focus on her classes. It took Suhi a long time for her emotions to finally settle. Sean from Class 1, Grade 10, was delighted to find himself in the same class as Suhi. He immediately pointed to the seat beside him and told Suhi to sit there, though it was clearly already occupied. Sean waved it off, saying it was fine, and told Soren to move to another seat instead. A chill ran down Suhi's spine. She quickly turned around and saw Soren standing there with a dark expression. After the day's classes ended, Helly and the others took the initiative to help Suhi tidy up her room. They told her to just sit aside and rest. But Soo-hee refused no matter what, and immediately bent down to lift a wooden crate from the floor. Ian tried to stop her, but it was already too late. As the cloth covering the crate slipped away, Soo-hee finally saw what was inside. She froze completely, her mind going blank. Only then did Ian explain that it was a 200-pound barbell. Hearing that made Soo-hee feel even worse. For a moment, the room fell into a deathly silence. It was Helly who broke the suffocating quiet first, asking Soo-hee to hand the barbell to him. As expected, he lifted it with ease, then comforted her through telepathy. "It's okay, Soo-hee. Look, I have this kind of ability too, so would you find me scary and hate me for it?" Seeing this, Soo-hee hurriedly shook her head in denial. When the two of them stood there without moving, Soren immediately realized that Helly was communicating with Soo-hee through telepathy. The expressions of the others also turned serious. Helly, however, admitted it openly and then asked Soo-hee, "You'll help us keep this a secret, right?" Hearing that, Soo-hee immediately promised she wouldn't tell anyone. It was as if they had exchanged secrets. She then sincerely praised how impressive their telepathy was. Suddenly, Sean popped out and startled her. With a smug look on his face, Sean said, "Look, I can stick to the wall now." Ian also picked up the barbell and started juggling it like a performance. Gino extended his warm hand towards Soo-hee. "If your hands get cold, just tell me." Watching the others act like maniacs, Soren could only grit his teeth in silence. When he opened his eyes again, he found Soo-hee staring at him with sparkling eyes. "What are you looking at? I don't have that kind of thing." Hearing that, Soo-hee looked a little disappointed. Seeing her reaction, Soren's face flushed red. I do have one, but I'm not showing it to you." After saying that, he hurried out the door, afraid of embarrassing himself any further. He didn't leave right away though. He stood outside listening to the bursts of laughter coming from inside the room. Before long, the room was completely tidied up. After seeing them off, Soo-hee let out a quiet sigh of relief. It felt good to have met such a group of friends. And every one of them possessed a special ability. Then a thought surfaced. Why did they all have such extraordinary powers? Could they be? Soo-hee immediately dismissed the idea. She had been falsely accused her whole life. She couldn't do the same thing by pinning unfounded blame on others. Besides, Helly was the second person who truly believed in her, and she wanted to believe in him as well. At that moment, Soo-hee realized she was no longer alone. These new friends of hers might all be the same as her. Meanwhile, on the other side of the school wall, several agile men vaulted over and slipped into the campus. They muttered among themselves, "Where are those vampires?" A few minutes later, Soo-hee was walking through the campus carrying out the trash. She hadn't expected the dumping area to be so far away, the path so dark, and more importantly, it was already 3 in the morning. The atmosphere made her recall what the discipline director had said. Not long ago, a murder had occurred nearby, and rumors claimed it was the work of vampires. Soo-hee's hair stood on end in an instant. She suddenly wished she could tell those who called her a vampire that she was afraid of vampires too. At last, she managed to throw the trash into the garbage truck. Just as she turned to head back to the dormitory, a chill shot down her spine. Don't mistake a girl's slender build for weakness. Soo-hee instantly grabbed the hand that reached toward her. A 6-foot-tall man was slammed hard to the ground with a clean shoulder throw. The impact cracked the ground beneath them. Only then did Soo-hee notice that the man was wearing a school uniform. Before she could think further, his 2 companions rushed over. The blonde-haired man snarled and revealed his claws. Soo-hee remained calm, slowly clenching her fist. When the man got a clear look at her, hesitation flickered across his face. But Soo-hee's punch landed squarely in his abdomen. The sheer force made him retch on the spot. In the end, he could only collapse to the ground, writhing in pain. The purple-haired man looked excited instead. "No way, you actually knocked Neza down. Who are you?" Soo-hee found it absurd and shot back. "Shouldn't I be the one asking that? Are you vampires?" The purple-haired man immediately told her to take that back. "Don't get the wrong idea, we're not vampires." A man with glasses spoke up beside him. "To us, that's basically an insult." It was clear that this group also held vampires in contempt. Even Pan, who had been beaten down earlier, said that they hated vampires the most. With that common ground, the misunderstanding was quickly cleared up. The men then introduced themselves and told Soo-hee that they were students from Yuching School, here to look for someone. "I knew it, there's that disgusting stench again." At that moment, Sokka and Noah appeared instantly beside Soo-hee. "What do you think you're doing surrounding a girl in the middle of the night?" The atmosphere, which had just calmed down, immediately turned tense. Fortunately, Pan remained relatively rational. A student at our school was murdered. It's related to the previous vampire killings. Sokka scoffed. So what does that have to do with us? If anything, the ones who killed those students are probably you. Hearing his attitude, Taha immediately grew irritated. Sokka and Noah also slipped into fighting stances. Can you take responsibility for what you just said? Sokka didn't back down at all. You chose the night of the full moon on purpose, because you know you can't beat us on normal days. As soon as the words left his mouth, both sides lunged at each other. Just then a sharp "stop" rang out as Suhi stepped between them. All of you stop, don't fight. At this point, even if they wanted to fight, they couldn't. Suhi restrained both of them by sheer strength alone. Noah hurried over to explain to Suhi that he had only been trying to help her. Suhi replied that it had all just been a misunderstanding. Only then did Sokka and Noah realize that they were completely being held in check. Before they could think any further, Heli arrived. It's already this late. What are you all doing here? The expressions of the Yuching school group also turned grim. Stay away from Suhi. Heli immediately stepped to Suhi's side, his tone softening. Suhi, are you hurt? As he spoke, he guided her protectively, starting to lead her back. But the others clearly had no intention of letting them leave so easily. Seeing this, Heli turned back with open hostility. I have nothing to say to you. Get out of our school now. The ones who killed our students were you, weren't they? Heli answered impatiently. No. They still didn't believe him and insisted that they had evidence. When they refused to back down, Heli spoke again. If it really was us, then what would you do? And what could you even do? In an instant, a powerful aura burst outward from Heli. Even Suhi beside him was left staring in shock. At the same time, Taha became even more convinced that Heli's group was responsible. And on Heli's side, killing intent surged just as fiercely. Suhi hurriedly stopped Heli from making a move and also talked Taha's group down. Only then did Heli realize he had lost control for a moment. I'm sorry, Suhi. I won't fight. He then spoke to the others in a calmer tone. I understand why you suspect us. But it truly wasn't us. Whether you believe it or not, at least don't start a fight here and now. Can't you see that Suhi has already been frightened? Hearing this, they could no longer press the issue. If you really want to settle this, then wait for the Nightball League that will face each other properly on the field. After hesitating for a moment, Pan finally spoke. Suhi, for your sake, we'll let them go this time. Sorry for scaring you earlier. Leaving those words behind, the group departed, still visibly angry. Suddenly, Jean seemed to sense something. Not long after, he sent the others away and went to find Soren on his own. As everyone knows, werewolves and vampires are natural enemies. Yet Soren happened to be a hybrid of the two species. In truth, he had only just confirmed this himself, and hadn't expected it to be discovered so quickly by someone else. Jean, the werewolf from Yuching School. Jean was also genuinely curious about why such an existence could even exist. But Soren had no intention of explaining it to him. Jean didn't press the issue and instead brought up the recent student murder at his school. The victim had clear bite marks on the neck and not a single drop of blood left in the body. Soren immediately realized that Jean suspected them. When Jean even tried to turn the accusation around, Soren shot back coldly. Even if we do feel those urges, aren't werewolves the same? Especially on a full moon night like tonight. Jean admitted that the instinctual impulses could be overwhelming. Even so, they would never harm humans. Soren said his group was the same, though other vampires might not be as restrained. Jean found that explanation highly suspicious. After hesitating, Soren finally told the truth. They were like beings who had awakened from an ancient dream, unable to understand their own existence. That was why Soren didn't even know why he carried werewolf blood himself. Outsiders might lump them together with ordinary vampires, but they didn't see themselves that way at all. Hearing this, Jean began to feel a measure of goodwill toward Soren. Perhaps because of that half-werewolf blood, Soren realized he didn't dislike Jean as much as he had expected. However, just as Soren reached out, Jean was called away by his teammates. Meanwhile, Harry had just escorted Suhi back to the dormitory. Only then did Suhi finally have the chance to properly meet Sokka and Noah. The two of them stared at her, momentarily stunned. It wasn't until Suhi said goodnight and went inside that they turned to Harry and asked about her identity. They immediately switched to telepathic communication. We felt a surge of energy earlier, that's why we rushed over. What we saw was Suhi taking on 3 werewolves by herself. That was the first time I'd ever felt such an overwhelmingly dominant energy. Noah added, when we were about to fight. Just one sentence from Soo-hee made it impossible for me to resist. That was why they suspected she might be a powerful figure from their own kind. After hearing this, Harry stated clearly that Soo-hee was not one of them. On the contrary, she hated vampires more than anyone. At the same time, Soo-hee was quietly sorting through everything that had just happened. She couldn't understand why Pan insisted that Harry and the others were the killers, especially when the dean had said the previous case was caused by vampires. As a result, doubts began to form in her mind about the true identities of Harry and his companions. Not long after, the 7 of them gathered to discuss the situation. Since their usual meeting spot was now Soo-hee's room, they moved the discussion to Solan's instead. The reasons were simple. It was centrally located and clean. As for the students who had been drained of blood, most of the evidence clearly pointed to vampires. Even though the 7 of them only fed on a single specific day, they were still worried Soo-hee might misunderstand. Solan's voice grew noticeably louder. That's exactly why I said we shouldn't get too close to her, and you guys even told her about your abilities. Sokka immediately blew up at that, while the 4 on Harry's side looked oddly relaxed, almost like they were enjoying the chaos. Solan turned his head away, huffing. Well, I didn't tell her anything. Noah, who had been quiet the whole time, spoke up. But we've never actually seen Solan's special ability, have we? What if he doesn't have one at all? That instantly set Solan off. Cian added fuel to the fire, grinning. If that's the case, we should just bite him to death. Solan was so angry he was left speechless. Cian's eyes sparkled as he joked. I believe you. After all, no one talks about their ability more passionately than you do. Soon the conversation shifted back to Soo-hee. To keep her from finding out that they were vampires, and hating them for it, they finally agreed on one thing. From now on, they'd just greet her normally like ordinary classmates. However, on the very next evening, Cian came looking for Soo-hee. Let's go out together this weekend. He completely ignored Solan's furious shouting. We can go to the plaza, take a walk, eat some ice cream, just the 2 of us. Suddenly, Solan popped up between them. No way that I'm going too. Cian immediately protested. Solan, on the other hand, was worried Cian might say something careless. When the argument dragged on with no end in sight, Solan sent a message to the others through telepathy. In an instant, everyone started shouting that they wanted to join as well. While the 2 were still arguing, a voice suddenly echoed in Soo-hee's mind. Soo-hee, are you going to the plaza this weekend? Can I come too? Blushing, Soo-hee nodded and agreed. Right then, Harry appeared behind her. Then I'll see you this weekend. In the end, all 7 of them decided to go to the plaza together with Soo-hee. Unfortunately, Cian was being anything but considerate. Early that weekend morning, Soo-hee arrived at the plaza. Cian greeted her with an overly cheerful wave. Seeing that he was alone, Soo-hee felt a bit puzzled. Cian explained that the other 6 were too busy, calling them a bunch of people who loved to stand others up. So let's just go have fun, forget about them. Innocent as Soo-hee was, she believed him without much thought and followed him along. Still, a faint sense of disappointment lingered. She had wanted to ask Harry what had happened, but decided against it. She shouldn't disturb him. And so she walked along looking slightly troubled. Suddenly, she thought about using telepathy to contact Harry, only to realize that unless Harry reached out first, she had no way of contacting him at all, which made her feel a little regretful. While she was lost in thought, Cian had already bought some ice cream. Grinning proudly, he showed his teeth. I asked the shop to give us extra. Soo-hee was instantly taken aback, feeling unexpectedly cherished. Just as Cian was admiring how wonderful their time together was, a furious shout from Ian suddenly rang out in his mind. Cian, where are you right now? Weren't we supposed to meet at 7? It's only 5. Where did you go? Cian replied calmly, I said 5 from the start. I'm the only one who didn't stand Soo-hee up. You guys are seriously disappointing. Solan grew even angrier, swearing he wouldn't let Cian get away with it. Cian looked completely unfazed. Then come get me. We're going to take a boat later. What, are you going to fight me out at sea? Watching Cian's constantly changing expressions, Soo-hee stood quietly to the side, unaware that he was communicating with the others. After thinking for a moment, she finally said, Thank you. Cian, you must be busy too, but you still came to keep me company. Hearing that, Cian's face reddened slightly. I guess I'm just considerate like that. Soo-hee then admitted that it was her first time visiting the plaza. She had always been afraid of crowded places. Sien immediately noticed her unease. Then let's take a boat. There aren't many people out on the water, and if we leave now we can still catch the sunset. He told Suhee to wait there while he went to buy the tickets. Suhee obediently sat down and waited. Suddenly, Harry's voice echoed in her mind. Suhee, are you at the plaza right now? Hearing that, Suhee felt a flicker of joy. Didn't you say you had something urgent to take care of today? Harry sounded a bit embarrassed. It's not urgent, it's important. Curious, Suhee asked, what is it? Seeing you. Those two simple words made Suhee's face flush red. Nervous, she took big bites of her ice cream. I thought you weren't the type to joke around. Harry said he wasn't joking at all. Suhee found it hard to believe and didn't know what to say. So Harry asked her to wait for him and apologized for being late to their date. Suhee froze for a moment, then shyly agreed. Suddenly remembering that Sien had gone to buy the boat tickets, she headed toward the ticket booth, wanting to stop him, or have him buy one more. Caught up in her excitement, she failed to notice a pair of blood-red eyes watching her from the alley. In the next instant, a withered hand shot out. Only then did Suhee react, but she was still dragged straight into the alley. The attacker clamped a hand tightly over her mouth, stopping her from screaming. Suhee suddenly noticed his blood-red eyes. She exerted force with her arms and flipped him over her shoulder. With a heavy crash, dirt and stone exploded across the ground. He lay there motionless, taking a long while before finally stirring. Only then did Suhee notice his unnaturally sharp fingernails. A chill surged up her spine. Could he be? Before she could finish the thought, he rose again in a twisted, unnatural posture. He snapped his head around and stared straight at Suhee. Seeing his face clearly, Suhee finally confirmed it. He was a vampire. Overwhelming fear pinned her in place, leaving her unable to move as the vampire advanced step by step. The vampire suddenly opened his jaws wide. At that critical moment, Sien arrived in time and slammed him hard into the wall. Suhee, are you okay? Suhee was just about to explain what had happened, when the vampire suddenly widened his eyes, bared his fangs and lunged straight at Sien. He slammed Sien to the ground, pinning him there. Seeing this, Suhee's heart clenched, forcing down her fear. She rushed forward and threw a punch, moving with astonishing speed. Having just suffered a heavy blow, the vampire didn't dare take it head-on. He released Sien and darted aside. In the next instant, Suhee's punch shattered the ground, yet it still failed to injure the vampire. Taking advantage of the opening, the vampire reached out towards Suhee. Suddenly, Suhee felt herself enveloped by an unseen force. Ian appeared out of nowhere and sent the vampire flying with a single punch. At the same time, Suhee was lifted into the air and caught in Zaka's arms. Moments later, the two landed back in the alley. The fight was far from over. After confirming Suhee was unharmed, Ian turned his attention to the vampire who had risen once more. The sun hadn't even set yet. How could this thing be active? Even if no sunlight reached the alley, even if he covered his entire body. Other than their own group, vampires shouldn't be able to move at all before sunset. As Ian pondered this, the vampire suddenly spoke. Hand the girl over, now. Only then did they realize that Suhee had been his target all along. There was no time to think about causes or consequences. Several more vampires closed in from the mouth of the alley. Even Zaka was caught off guard for a moment. Ian immediately told him to take Suhee and run toward a crowded area. Almost at the same time, the vampires lunged at them. Just as the attackers were about to reach them, Zaka and Suhee vanished from where they stood. In only a brief moment, they were already far away, the speed so extreme that Suhee couldn't even keep her eyes open. While marveling at how incredible Zaka was, a strong wave of nausea rose in her throat. Zaka, wait, I think I'm getting motion sickness. Meanwhile, back in the alley, one vampire was being consumed by raging flames. Talk, who sent you? What's your objective? As the words were spoken, the fire surged even higher. Noah calmly explained that these were merely low-level vampires. There was no way to communicate with them properly. Solon, however, immediately turned his anger towards Sien. Knowing he was at fault, Sien didn't retort like he usually would. With Gino stepping in to mediate, the tense atmosphere finally eased. After Harry dealt with the last vampire, his expression turned grave. This wasn't a simple accident. Something powerful has its eyes on Suhee. Meanwhile, Suhee was leaning against a streetlight, vomiting uncontrollably. Beside her, Zaka kept apologizing. Even when Suhee said she was fine, he still looked deeply guilty. Suhee suddenly said, "Thank you, leaving him momentarily at a loss. "Thank you, for this time and for last time too. But, how did you know something would happen and come so quickly?" Sokka didn't know how to answer. Just as Suhi was about to press further, she froze. Because she saw a familiar figure not far away. Even after 10 years, she could recognize him at a glance. The boy who had once been nailed into a wooden coffin was standing there now. "See Chris." Suhi lost control and sprinted toward him. Yet an eerie smile crept across Chris's face. Seeing a figure that overlapped so perfectly with the boy from her memories, a flood of emotions surged through her. Forgetting Sokka beside her, Suhi ran straight for Chris. At that moment, Harry asked through telepathy if she was hurt, while Suhi explained breathlessly and kept running. At that moment, Pan suddenly appeared in front of her. He greeted her, causing her attention to shift away. When she looked back toward the corridor, Chris was already gone. Before she could think it through, Sokka stepped in front of her. "What do you want with Suhi?" Sokka and Pan immediately clashed, not giving Suhi any chance to speak. Pan's companions soon followed, and the moment Tahi saw Suhi, excitement flashed in his eyes. Sokka's expression, however, turned grim. Fortunately, his own teammates were approaching as well. The instant Cian spotted the werewolves, his face darkened. "What the hell? Why are these guys here?" The next second, Harry appeared beside Suhi. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. Thanks to everyone for coming to save me." After overhearing parts of the conversation, they quickly asked if something had happened. Hearing that, Suhi told them honestly what she had just gone through. The werewolves looked shocked. They clearly hadn't expected a vampire to appear in the plaza at this hour. Ian stated calmly that there was no need for them to intervene. The situation had already been handled. Pan, however, looked serious. "This is what you should have done in the first place, that if it were us, we'd never let Suhi fall into danger." Ian was about to lose his temper, but Gino stepped in and stopped him. Pan also reminded Suhi to keep her distance from Harry and the others, claiming it was all for her own good. Tahi took the chance to invite Suhi out next week. Cian immediately objected. "Suhi already has plans with us next week, and the week after that, and the week after that, forever." The two childish idiots instantly started arguing. Before long, they were each dragged away by their respective elders. Right after that, Cian went back to Suhi. "We actually have a birthday party the week after next. Will you come?" Tahi clearly didn't believe him, convinced he was lying again. Cian stuck out his tongue at him. "If you don't believe me, you can come too. Don't be ridiculous. You really think we'd celebrate your birthday?" But the next second their expressions changed completely. Suhi looked at them with bright, hopeful eyes. "It'd be great if you could all come." The two werewolves instantly turned eager, patting their chests and promising they'd definitely be there. That night, Suhi couldn't stop thinking about the figure she had seen during the day. She felt that if Chris were still alive, he would have grown up to look just like that. But Chris had clearly already, it must have been a mistake, just someone who looked similar. But how was that possible? How could she fail to recognize him? "Then why didn't you come looking for me? Why did you disappear again today? Still? At least you're alive." Beneath the night sky, Chris stood by the sea. He turned his head and looked toward the approaching figure. Suhi was frantic. "Chris, it's me. I'm Suhi. Don't you remember me? We used to be such close friends, playing together every day." Yet Chris remained cold and expressionless. Crying, Suhi continued, "You said you would believe me. You even told me to bite your neck." Chris suddenly smiled. "Of course I remember. Actually, I miss you too." In the next moment, Suhi jolted awake from her sleep, tears still clinging to the corners of her eyes. Was that a dream? It felt far too real. But Chris couldn't possibly have been there. Even so, Suhi couldn't help but run outside. Sure enough, there was no sign of the figure she had hoped to see by the shore. Regaining a bit of composure, she looked around at the pitch-dark surroundings, fear slowly creeping into her heart. It was clearly a full moon tonight, yet not a trace of moonlight shone down. Suddenly, a low beastly roar echoed nearby. Unable to see them clearly, Suhi first thought they were just a few large dogs, until those dogs all turned their gaze toward her. Her hair stood on end as she realized they were far larger than any dog. In the next moment, a familiar figure stepped in front of her. "Why are you here?" Suhi froze. She had come to the shore at night searching for someone from her past, only to find no trace of him, and instead run into Pan, now clearly changed in his werewolf form. Seeing Suhi standing there in her sleepwear, Pan immediately flushed red. Only then did Suhi take a closer look at him. White fur, golden eyes, and two sharp fangs turned outward. He looked nothing like his usual self. Noticing how red Pan's face was, Suhi suddenly realized she was still wearing her sleepwear and hurriedly covered her chest. Trying to ease the awkwardness, Pan said he was often like this himself, then quickly changed the subject. But seriously, Suhi, what are you doing out here so late? Suhi hesitated for a moment, then lied, saying she had only come out to look at the night sea. Pan couldn't help but worry. Why did you come alone? It's so dark out here. She explained that she thought tonight would be a full moon and brighter by the shore, but hadn't expected a lunar eclipse instead. Pan went on to explain that when the sun, earth, and moon align in a straight line, the moon is covered by Earth's shadow, creating a lunar eclipse, and that tonight was a particularly special one. Suhi listened, still not quite understanding what he was trying to say. Meanwhile, Pan's face only grew redder by the second. Suddenly, Suhi asked him instead, "Then why are you here?" Pan stammered, saying he had come to watch the lunar eclipse. Suhi followed up, "Where did everyone else go?" Cold sweat broke out on Pan's forehead as distant wolf howls echoed nearby. He forced himself to say they were still asleep. Then Pan suggested walking Suhi back, since she had run into vampires earlier that day and he didn't feel safe letting her return alone. He even muttered softly that he wanted to stay with her a little longer. To his surprise, Suhi immediately agreed. She was genuinely afraid of vampires and also of the wild dogs nearby. Pan looked confused. Wild dogs? There aren't any around here. Suhi pointed toward the direction she had come from. I definitely saw 3 huge wild dogs just now barking over there. They were even bigger than wolves. Even if they're not real wolves, it'd be bad if they attacked someone. Hearing that, Pan immediately said anxiously that they wouldn't hurt anyone, especially those wolves just now. Suhi didn't understand why Pan was so worked up and wondered if he knew those wolves. Realizing he had misspoken, Pan quickly explained, I mean, wolves are actually pretty nice animals. Suhi nodded, saying she agreed with that. Pan instantly brightened up and happily asked if Suhi liked wolves. With an innocent look, Suhi replied that she only liked them on TV. Real wolves were still pretty scary. Pan deflated immediately. The next day, Suhi was looking for books in the library. To her surprise, Healy found her there. He said he had already finished the book from last time, and Suhi remembered he had promised to tell her what it was about. Healy explained that the book was about werewolves and vampires. Suhi grew interested. So werewolves turn into wolves during a full moon, right? Healy replied, that's right. Suhi hesitated, then asked again, then what happens during a lunar eclipse? Can werewolves still transform? Healy said he wasn't sure either, but he had heard a saying, that during a lunar eclipse, a werewolf would fall in love with the first woman he saw, and love only her for the rest of his life. Hearing that, Suhi froze, her movements growing noticeably stiff. Healy quickly added that such cases were extremely rare and mostly just legends. Suhi snapped back to her senses and told him that she had actually seen a lunar eclipse not long ago. Healy was surprised and asked where she had seen it. Only then did Suhi realize she had spoken too freely, but she still told him honestly that she had gone to the seaside that night. Healy immediately grew anxious, worried that something might have happened to her. Suhi explained that she had only wanted to see the night as it had clearly been a full moon, yet the surroundings were unusually dark. Later she learned it was caused by a lunar eclipse. Pan had told her since she happened to run into him by the sea that night. Hearing this, Healy's expression turned incredulous, a faint killing intent flashing in his eyes. Just moments ago, Suhi had told Healy that she met Pan during the lunar eclipse. Even Healy, who was usually calm, lost his composure, because he knew the legend was true. During a lunar eclipse, a werewolf truly would fall in love with the first woman he saw. But he couldn't tell Suhi any of this. All he could do was ask her to make sure she brought him along next time. From Healy's expression just now, Suhi could already tell that Pan didn't get along well with Healy and the others. The only explanation she could think of was the Nightball League. Probably rivalry between the two sides. Just then Gino suddenly popped up behind Suhi. Seeing that Suhi was actually in the library made him visibly happy. Suhi felt a bit awkward and pointed behind Gino. So, are you all here to borrow books? Ian brushed his bangs aside and said with a straight face, of course Suhi, my hobby is reading. Sean straight up pulled out a book on quantum mechanics and held it up proudly. It was honestly painful to watch. Gino immediately called them out. Ian, Sean, stop bragging, and Noah, your book is upside down. Gino added, these guys all suffer from book allergy. The only one who actually reads is Healy. Suhi was left speechless. Then Gino asked curiously, "So what were you guys talking about just now?" Suhi answered honestly, it was about the book Healy had been reading, a story about werewolves and vampires. She even mentioned the legend about werewolves falling in love with the first woman they see during a lunar eclipse. Isn't that romantic? The moment she finished speaking, the 5 people standing in front of her fell completely silent. Sean waved his hand dismissively. "Relax, even so, werewolves are still half mutt." Ian pinched his nose in disgust. "Get too close and you'll have dog hair flying everywhere." Zaka added, "Honestly, the human part in them is probably less than 10%. Noah nodded in agreement. Listening to this, Solon broke into a cold sweat. Alright, half human, half dog, wild and stupid, kind of pathetic. Gino hurried to shut them up. "Enough. Stop it," he literally said she found it romantic. But Solon was on a roll. Falling in love with the first person you see during a lunar eclipse, that's just idiotic. Vampires, on the other hand, are cultured, intelligent, clean, and carry real nobility. Suddenly, Suhi cut him off. But vampires don't have something called love. No, they don't even have a human heart warm enough to understand what love really is. Vampires are cold and cruel monsters. Compared to them, werewolves are far better. There's no comparison at all. Vampires are the most hateful existence. As soon as Suhi finished speaking, silence fell over the room. Healy's expression turned extremely grim. Only then did Suhi realize she might have gone too far. "I'm sorry, I suddenly lashed out at you." Gino quickly tried to comfort her. "It's okay I really hate vampires too." "We know," the others said. "After all, no one likes vampires." Healy forced a faint smile as he spoke. Sean, however, looked visibly downcast. Behind him, he unconsciously tightened his grip on the letter in his hand. That night, Healy sought Suhi out alone. He told her not to dwell on what had happened earlier. He understood how much she hated vampires. Being mistaken for one in the past had caused her so much suffering, and he understood that. Hearing this, Suhi finally relaxed a little. "Thank you. But actually, there's a more important reason," she said softly. "The reason I hate vampires the most is because they killed Chris. He was my only friend. When everyone else isolated me, he was the only one who believed in me. To prove I wasn't a vampire, he even asked me to bite his neck. Back then, I couldn't even believe in myself. But one day, Chris was killed by a vampire." Her whole body trembled as she spoke. "So how could I ever like vampires? A friend like him, could I ever meet someone like that again in this lifetime?" After listening quietly, Healy finally spoke. "Suhi, would you like to bite my neck?" The moment he said that, Suhi froze, completely at a loss. She explained that back then she and Chris were still children. Now that they were grown up, she couldn't do something so embarrassing. Knowing full well she wouldn't actually do it, Healy still said that he believed her. Seeing how serious Healy looked, Suhi instead asked, "Then Healy, would you bite my neck?" Healy was stunned that he struggled hard to suppress his instinctive urge. "See, you get shy too." Suhi's words pulled him back to his senses. "I just meant that back then we trusted each other that much. But he was killed by a vampire. How could I not hate vampires after that? Honestly, there's another reason I came to this school. T. Library here has a lot of old books, so I want to see if there's a way to completely wipe out vampires. The last time I locked eyes with a vampire at the plaza, I was so scared my whole body broke out in goosebumps. That's when I truly understood. Those vampires are monsters with no humanity at all." Hearing this, a trace of disappointment crossed Healy's face. Then Suhi asked softly, "So, Healy, what did you want to see me about?" Only then did Healy hand Suhi the invitation he had prepared long ago. Suhi smiled as she took it. "I'll definitely come, but whose birthday is it?" Healy explained that it was everyone's birthday. None of them knew their real birth dates, so they chose the day they escaped the orphanage as their shared birthday. Meanwhile, in Solon's dorm room, Sean curled up like a deflated balloon, shrinking into himself. "If Suhi ever finds out who we really are, she'll definitely be disappointed in us, won't she?" The others all looked equally gloomy. Solon, however, sounded more detached. "Whether she's disappointed or not doesn't matter. I told you from the start not to get too close to her. In the end, it's still just us." But Sean muttered that he still wanted to hang out with Suhi. At that point, Sokka raised a question. "But why does Suhi hate vampires so much?" Solon scoffed. "Of course humans hate vampires. Even if we've never hurt anyone, to humans all vampires are the same." "True, someone agreed. There's no way Suhi would trust us unconditionally, unless we wiped out all the other vampires. Hearing that, Sean suddenly had an idea. Then why don't we tell Suhi that Solon is the vampire? That way we can clear ourselves. After that, just burn everything down and leave no evidence. Don't worry, Solon, we'll remember you forever. The moment he heard that, Solon exploded in anger. The gloomy atmosphere instantly became livelier. Watching Sean and Solon roughhousing, Ian cut in. Enough. Let's focus. That plan is only a last resort, so from now on, we should avoid using our abilities as much as possible to prevent exposure. Suddenly, Noah spoke up in a low voice. If we do get exposed, will we be driven out again? We barely managed to escape the orphanage. Gino tried to reassure everyone. Even if Suhi finds out we're vampires, she probably wouldn't tell anyone, right? That idea was immediately shot down by Solon. His expression turned unusually serious. After what we've been through, you still dare to trust humans? It turned out that shortly after they escaped the orphanage, they had once encountered a young girl. Seeing how pitiful they were, she let them stay in a warehouse. But one day she discovered their horrifying habit of drinking raw chicken blood. After that, she called in a group of hunters to chase them down. In the end, Healy and the others ran into the orphanage director once again. So this is where you are. Didn't I tell you? Leaving the orphanage would put you in danger. That incident left a deep scar in the hearts of the 7 of them, and ever since then they no longer dared to trust humans. These 7 beautiful boys were not born on the same day, yet they celebrated their birthdays together. Every year on that day they had to gnaw on a raw bird. Only then could they keep living. They had all grown up in the same orphanage, but calling it a life would be generous. It was closer to imprisonment. So the 7 of them escaped together and chose the day of their escape as their shared birthday. Today marked their 120th birthday, and Suhi was honored to be invited to the celebration. Seeing such an exquisite mansion hidden deep within the forest left Suhi both puzzled and shocked. To prevent suspicion, Healy told her that the estate had been inherited from a wealthy family. While they were talking, more people arrived from behind. It was Pan and his group from Yuching Academy. They had come as well, hoping to grow closer to Suhi. Pan's eyes were fixed entirely on Suhi, and his words came out hesitant and awkward. Before Suhi could reply, Sean stepped forward. We only invited you out of politeness, didn't expect you to actually show up without a shred of tact. Ta replied impatiently, weren't you afraid we wouldn't come and you'd end up having too much fun without us? Suhi quickly stepped in, stopping the 2 of them before their argument could continue. Not long after, the banquet officially began. Pan stood beside Suhi, his gaze drifting toward her again and again. After a long pause, he finally said softly, I really missed you. Suhi smiled. Me too. I'm really happy to see you again. We message all the time, but it's been so long since we met face to face. Just then Ian suddenly appeared, looking fierce. What? This guy's been messaging Suhi? The 2 immediately looked at each other with clear hostility. Completely oblivious, Suhi casually showed them the photos Pan had sent her. Ian's expression instantly changed. So cute. Suhi, send them to me too. Pan explained that he really liked animals just like Suhi did. At that moment, Sean jumped out. He doesn't like animals at all. He himself. Before he could finish, Gino covered his mouth. Most of the photos are wolves though. Suhi, do you really like wolves? Hearing that, Suhi nodded happily. I do. Pan's face immediately flushed red. But my favorite is still cats. After that, squirrels, rabbits, and sheep. Hearing that, the 2 vampires exchanged a glance and burst out laughing. That was when Suhi said she had prepared gifts for everyone. She excitedly opened the box. Tada! An anti-vampire self-defense kit. Sean and Ian both looked awkward. Gino accepted the gift as well, a little embarrassed. Laughter broke out everywhere. Some were even laughing to tears. The werewolves rushed over too, teasing Suhi. So thoughtful. This gift is amazing. Sean immediately protested. Then where are your gifts? If you came empty-handed, get out. One by one, they hurriedly took out gifts that were light in both weight and meaning. Sean looked even more annoyed. Here, this one's for you, Dust. Giving you any more would be a waste, so use it sparingly. At that moment, Suhi noticed a gift box tucked under Pan's arm. Pan said it was for Suhi. Suhi panicked a little. But it's not my birthday. Why are you giving me a gift? He couldn't really explain why and only told her to open it first. Ah, so cute. Are these little wolf pups? These are the cutest photos I've ever seen. This one kind of looks like you. Thank you, Pan. Hearing that, Pan looked completely satisfied. I'm glad you like it. As the sun set, Suhi said goodbye to Heli. When she learned that Heli and the others would be staying there for the night, Suhi originally wanted to stay and help clean up. But Heli unexpectedly told her to head back early instead. In the end, Suhi had no choice but to leave with Pan and the others. Not long after leaving, she suddenly remembered that she had forgotten the photo frame. Just thinking about it still being in Sean's hands made her uneasy. So she said a quick goodbye to the group and ran back toward the villa. When Suhi returned, the villa was completely silent. The place also clearly hadn't been cleaned yet. She assumed Heli and the others were resting, walked around for a bit and noticed only one room with teehee lights on. Suhi pushed the door open and asked softly, "Is anyone here?" Before she could finish speaking, she saw the 7 of them, Heli included, holding something in their arms, tearing into it raw, their faces filled with enjoyment. Suhi froze on the spot, fear locking her body so tightly she couldn't move at all. From the moment she enrolled, the girl had been surrounded by 7 stunningly handsome boys. Suhi never imagined that every single one of them was a vampire. In an instant, all the strange things that had happened before finally made sense. Why each of them possessed special abilities, and why the werewolves had immediately accused Heli and the others of being the killers. Why Heli reacted so unnaturally when she once asked him to bite her neck. Even the words he spoke about believing she wasn't a vampire. Everything now had the same answer. They were vampires themselves. After witnessing them feeding with her own eyes, Suhi instinctively stepped backward again and again. Heli desperately tried to explain, but the sight of his lips stained with fresh blood only deepened her fear. Stumbling, she ran down the stairs. Then Heli's voice echoed inside her mind once more. "Suhi, please, just give me a chance to explain." Instead, it made her flee even faster. On the verge of breaking down, she shouted, "Stop using telepathy to talk to me. It only makes me more afraid." Heli froze at her words and didn't reach out again. Regret was written clearly across the faces of the others as well. Suhi fled all the way into the depths of the forest. She collapsed onto the grass, sobbing uncontrollably. She had thought that after Chris she had finally found friends who believed in her again. People just like her, all carrying their own secrets. In the end, it was nothing more than a cruel deception. At that moment, a faint rustling sound came from behind her. She spun around and shouted, "Who's there?" Instinctively, she thought Heli had followed her and cried out, "Please don't come any closer. I hate vampires more than anything in this world." But when she saw who it was, her voice stopped short. At the same time, Heli and the other 6 still hadn't recovered from the shock. After hesitating for a while, Heli finally said that he was going to look for Suhi. Soren immediately shouted back, "Why look for her? And what are you even going to say? Do you really think explaining anything now will help?" Even Xian, usually full of ideas, asked what they should do. Instead, Soren snapped, "What should we do? Before long, the whole school will know. When that happens, we'll be forced to run again." Zeta insisted that Suhi wouldn't expose them, but someone quickly countered, "Do you think she'll just pretend nothing happened? We're still classmates." In the end, they agreed that at least they needed to talk face to face. "Zaka, try to find where she is." Hearing that, Zaka activated his ability and began sensing Suhi's energy signal. The very next second, his face turned pale. "Something's wrong. There are a lot of vampires nearby." Everyone froze in disbelief when they heard that. Without a second thought, Heli dashed out. At the same time, Suhi was already surrounded by vampires. "Zaka, where is Suhi right now?" Zaka replied, "Straight ahead, right in your direction." With her location confirmed, Heli pushed himself to T limit and rushed forward. Meanwhile, the vampires had already closed in on Suhi. One of them extended its claws toward her. Suhi dropped into a low crouch to dodge, then burst through the gap between them. She ran with everything she had. But her speed was no match for the vampires. Just as one of them was about to grab her, she spun around. Her fist slammed straight into the vampire's abdomen. Before another could react, it took a heavy punch to the face as well. But when Suhi turned again, 3 vampires were already standing in front of her. They seized her by the throat. Suhi struggled desperately to pry their hands away, but their grip didn't budge at all. "Someone, please save me." She thought of Heli, then remembered the sight of him as a vampire. She cried out loudly for Pan, but before he could reach her, the vampires were already cut down. When she looked ahead, every single vampire was lying motionless on the ground. In the end, Heli was the first to arrive. Seeing that Suhi was unharmed, he finally let out a breath. But the look in Suhi's eyes was still filled with fear. Helly didn't dare step closer. Suhi, I know you must be terrified, but we're not what you think we are. Then Helly, aren't you a vampire? Aren't all of you? Please tell me you're not. Tell me this is all a misunderstanding. Helly choked, unable to say a word. That was when Suhi completely lost hope. You said you believed I wasn't a vampire. Was it because you knew all along that I'm not your kind? Helly hurriedly denied it. No, Suhi, that's not it. Suhi wanted an answer, but Helly still couldn't give one. Just then someone called her name from behind. Suhi thought Pan had arrived, but the voice said, "It's me. I'm Chris." Suhi couldn't believe it. Helly froze as well. But she would recognize that face anywhere. Chris, is it really you? But how are you still alive? At that moment, Helly received a message from Zaka. Helly, are you with Suhi right now? Yes. What's going on? While fighting off vampires, Zaka explained rapidly. Right beside Suhi, there's someone with almost the exact same energy wavelength as her. The boy who was nailed into a coffin 10 years ago, that he's standing in front of her again. After he mentioned how he once let Suhi bite his neck, Suhi could no longer hold back her longing. In the next instant, she threw herself into Chris's arms, breaking down as she spoke. Chris, do you know how much I've missed you all these years? I never forgot you, not once. You were the only friend who ever believed in me. Standing behind her, Helly felt as if his heart were being cut apart. He knew he had already lost Suhi's trust. Chris answered her in return, saying that he had missed her just as much, but never dared to look for her, afraid she wouldn't believe he was still alive. But I hope you'll believe me. You have no idea how long it took me to finally find you. At that moment, Helly sensed something wrong, a sharp edge creeping into his voice. Yet Suhi noticed nothing. Holding Chris tightly, she said, I believe you, as long as you're alive, that's enough for me. Hearing that, Chris lifted Suhi's hand gently. I'm happy to hear you say that you'll always be my princess. As he spoke, he bent down with a gentleman's grace. But in the next instant, he suddenly revealed his fangs, his mouth opening as his expression turned disturbingly wild. Suhi was still frozen in place. The next moment, a large hand clamped tightly around Chris's neck. Seeing it was Helly, Suhi demanded, What are you doing? Helly didn't answer her, but he stared straight at Chris, his voice low and furious. You bastard! Stay away from Suhi. Chris only curled his lips into a faint, mocking smile. He easily brushed Helly's hand aside. The one who should back off is you. Suhi stood there helplessly, panic written all over her face. In the next second, Sokka dropped down between the two of them. Without a word, he swung his fist straight at Chris. Chris, however, remained perfectly calm. He caught Sokka's wrist and flung him aside with brutal ease. Seeing this, Suhi cried out anxiously, Chris, what are you? Before she could finish, Chris cut her off. Suhi, I'm saving you from these vampires. As he spoke, the others launched their attacks at the same time. Chris remained calm, effortlessly dodging Ian's and Soren's strikes. He countered with a punch, landing it squarely in Soren's abdomen. Gino's and Sean's fists followed immediately, but Chris blocked both with ease, one hand on each side. He gave a faint laugh. How disappointing. This is all the strength you have now. Looks like you remember nothing at all. Before he could finish speaking, black matter surged up from the ground and wrapped around his ankles. In an instant, it crawled up to his neck. Noah's ability. Noah controlled the dark matter, forcibly restricting Chris's movements. Who are you? And why are you targeting Suhi? Chris's expression didn't change. So you really don't know anything. At that moment, Pan and his group finally arrived. Suhi, are you okay? Chris revealed a playful, almost amused smile. In the next second, a violent burst of purple energy erupted, engulfing everything within a 100-meter radius. When the explosion faded, everyone was lying on the ground. Helly was the first to regain consciousness. Pan immediately began searching for Suhi as well. Only then did Helly realize Suhi was nowhere to be seen. At that very moment, Suhi had already been carried more than 100 meters away by Chris. She struggled violently in his arms. Why are you doing this? Hearing this, Chris softened his expression. Didn't I already tell you? I'm protecting you, keeping you from being hurt by those vampires. Suhi froze. Images of Helly drinking blood flashed through her mind, leaving her momentarily speechless, unable to argue back. Chris continued in a low, insistent voice. I'm the only friend who ever truly believed in you, so you should believe in me too. But Soo-hee suddenly realized that none of those so-called male leads were even human. In a burst of anger, she turned and ran, only to be abducted by the childhood friend who had died 10 years ago, while Helly still chased after them. Helly didn't hesitate as he lunged forward, claws aimed straight for Chris's head. With Soo-hee held in his arms, Chris couldn't properly defend himself. Just as Helly's sharp claws were about to strike, Soo-hee shouted at the top of her lungs, "Helly! Don't, Helly!" Instantly, Helly's body was frozen in place. A flash of vicious intent crossed Chris's eyes. In the next moment, he delivered a heavy kick straight into Helly. Soo-hee cried out in panic, "Helly!" She shoved Chris away and ran toward Helly without hesitation. But in the very next second, Chris grabbed her again. His voice turned cold. "Why are you running to that guy? Have you forgotten who it was that I died for?" Hearing this, Soo-hee's heart trembled, but she reacted instantly. "You're not Chris. Who are you really?" Seeing that, Chris gave a faint smile that he clearly had no intention of pretending anymore. His expression twisted into something feral. "Then who do you think I am?" As he spoke, he revealed his two sharp fangs once again. Soo-hee froze on the spot, struck by fear. In the next instant, Chris lunged forward to bite, then frowned. "This doesn't taste right." He lifted his gaze and realized he had bitten Soren's arm instead. Immediately, he shot out a hand and clamped it around Soren's throat. As Soren struggled for breath, Soo-hee rushed forward to help, only to be slapped away by Chris, sent flying several meters. She crashed to the ground and lay there completely motionless. Seeing this, Soren's rage exploded. Within a few breaths, he transformed into a massive wolf. Soo-hee regained consciousness at that moment, and the sight of Soren left her stunned. Without hesitation, Soren slammed a claw against Chris's chest. He then opened his jaws wide and bit down hard on Chris's neck. Yet even in wolf form, Soren was no match for Chris. With a single violent swing, Chris sent him flying away. His body slid across the ground for more than 10 meters. The sight made Soo-hee cry out in panic. At the same time, Chris was badly wounded as well, and Pan's group finally arrived. Irritation was written all over Chris's face as he prepared to strike again. In the next instant, Soo-hee stopped him. Chris's expression turned ruthless. "I didn't want to do this to you, but since you're in my way, I'll cripple you first." Just as his attack was about to hit Soo-hee, Helly suddenly rushed in and pulled her into his arms. His back, however, took the full force of Chris's blow. Only then did Pan and the others realize that this enemy was far from an ordinary vampire. One after another, they transformed into massive wolves, unleashing their full strength. In the brief moment when Chris was distracted by Soo-hee, Pan and the other wolves lunged straight at him. They clamped their jaws onto different parts of Chris's body. Yet in the next second, an overwhelming surge of energy erupted from Chris. By then, several bone-deep claw marks were carved across Helly's back. Even so, his first concern was still Soo-hee's condition. Seeing this, Soo-hee could no longer suppress her fear and burst into tears. "Helly, I can't tell anymore. That wasn't the Chris I knew. The Chris I knew, he wasn't the kind who drinks blood." She couldn't finish the last word, but Helly understood her meaning all the same. He began apologizing again and again. "I'm sorry, Soo-hee. I'm sorry. I turned out to be this kind of existence. Even if you hate me for the rest of your life, could you at least let me take you away for now? I want to bring you somewhere safer." At that moment, the towering vampire Helly was crying uncontrollably. Soo-hee looked at him but didn't answer right away. Meanwhile, Pan and the others were still locked in a brutal fight with Chris. After forcing him back, it was clear that Chris was reaching his limit. Before he could even catch his breath, Sokka landed beside him. Chris tried to strike, only to realize his feet had already been completely restrained. The four others, everyone except Noah, rushed in at once. Chris's expression twisted into something feral as intense purple light erupted from his body, flooding the entire forest and turning night into day. When everyone regained their vision, Chris was gone. Ian was the first to react and immediately started looking for Soo-hee. By then, Soo-hee had already run far away with Helly. Moonlight fell over them, casting an almost intimate atmosphere. Helly, the leader of the vampire group, had led the other 6 since childhood, barely surviving in a world dominated by humans. Though he was a vampire, he never harmed innocents. When hungry, he only fed on small animals like chickens or ducks. But when it came to enemies, he showed no mercy, especially toward evil vampires, whom he struck down without hesitation. Yet this powerful Helly was now crying like a child. Seeing this side of him left Soo-hee at a loss. Helly then told her about the past of the 7 of them. How, after escaping from Baoyu Institution, they had hidden their identities, especially from her, Soo-hee. More than fearing others discovering they were vampires, they feared that she would be disappointed in them. Hearing this, Soo-hee felt her thoughts spiral into chaos. She still couldn't accept that Helly and the others were all vampires. She couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you say you grew up together in Baoyu Institution? Then how did you become vampires? Were you bitten when you were children?" Helly looked just as confused. "We don't know either. Why we became vampires that we know nothing. One day we suddenly became like this. That place called an institution on the surface was actually where we were imprisoned while growing up. As for what we truly are or how we became vampires, we still have no answers. And we're different from ordinary vampires. Sunlight, crosses, even holy water. None of them affect us." Hearing this, Soo-hee asked anxiously, "Then how did you know you were vampires? Even though everyone has special abilities, isn't it possible that you're just special humans? Like me?" Helly didn't hold much hope as he answered, "Because we crave blood. Other than blood, we don't want to eat anything. And even if we don't eat at all, we won't die." After hearing this, disappointment clearly showed on Soo-hee's face. Helly continued painfully, "But we only drink blood on our birthday each year, and only the blood of animals that are already dead that we've never harmed humans." Almost pleading, Helly asked Soo-hee to believe him and said he would do everything he could to earn her trust. Still confused, Soo-hee asked, "Then why did you come to save me? Weren't you afraid I would hate you or expose your secret to everyone at school?" "Because I felt that I had to save you. From the very first moment I saw you, I felt that this was my destiny. Who I am, what kind of life I should live and why I exist, I knew nothing about any of it, but for the first time I had a clear answer. I was born to protect you and I will live to protect you." After saying that, Helly's face turned red without him realizing it. Hearing it, Soo-hee felt her heart start racing as well. Suddenly she spoke up, "Helly, do you want to bite me?" Helly's pupils shrank instantly. "No, I can't." He avoided her gaze, afraid he wouldn't be able to control himself. Seeing this, Soo-hee gently tugged at his clothes. Looking at him earnestly, she said, "I trust you." A few minutes later, moonlight spilled through the forest. Helly's lips were pressed against Soo-hee's neck. In the small grove, moonlight fell on every leaf, and a man and a woman sat against a tree trunk. The girl's face was flushed, her eyes wide open. The boy's ears burned red as his eyes stayed tightly shut. After a moment, Helly finally pulled away from Soo-hee's neck, reluctant to leave. Just lifting his head nearly drained all of his strength. He asked softly, "Soo-hee, are you okay?" Soo-hee nodded gently, "I'm fine. You only pressed your lips there." "What about you, Helly? You look exhausted. Do you really want to drink my blood?" Hearing this, Helly lowered his head in shame. "I'd be lying if I said there was no impulse. But more than that, I'm afraid of losing your trust again. Even knowing I'm a vampire, you still chose to believe in me that I don't want to disappoint someone like you. You didn't disappoint me." Soo-hee's words struck Helly like a shock. "Helly, you've never disappointed me. You know it. I used to hate vampires more than anyone. Because back then I thought they were all dangerous. But this time and so many times before, it was always you who came to save me. When you came for me, I was truly happy. Even if you're a vampire, I don't hate you. Actually, I don't hate any of you. And I'm sorry, I spoke too harshly just now. Now that we understand each other, I hope we can be closer than before." Hearing that, Helly stood frozen for several seconds. Only after a moment did he dare believe that he hadn't misheard her. Just then, Zaka's anxious voice echoed in Helly's mind. "Helly, that guy's gone. You're with Soo-hee right now, right? Is she okay?" Helly replied a bit guiltily, "She's fine." After hearing the situation, Zaka immediately said they should go find Helly. Helly paused in surprise. "You're coming over now?" Zaka then realized something was off. "Soo-hee probably wouldn't want us to go over, right?" The others hesitated as well. Helly turned to Soo-hee and asked for her opinion. "Helly, tell them we'll come over to you." A few minutes later, Soo-hee and Helly returned to everyone. Pan's group was the first to step forward, telling Soo-hee not to worry about them. They were plenty strong. But the next moment, Pan's expression darkened as he told Soo-hee the truth, that they were actually werewolves. Soo-hee was surprised since she hadn't seen them transform just now. Pan explained that they had been hiding their identities from others, and that it was just as hard for them to tell her, just like Helly before. Hearing this, Soo-hee was moved to tears. "I don't hate you, no matter what you are. whether you're werewolves or vampires." As she spoke, Suhi looked towards Solon and the others nearby. They felt both worried and confused, until Suhi called out each of their names one by one. "I'm really grateful to all of you that I've hidden my abilities since I was little, but you still accepted me. That I'm truly happy and truly thankful. So this time, could you give me a chance like this?" After hearing her words, everyone looked confused, unsure how to respond. Jinho was the first to speak. "Of course that we're the ones who should be thanking you. That I hope we can become even better friends from now on." In the blazing summer heat, nothing suited boys better than pouring their sweat onto the field, and nothing made it happier than having the girl they liked cheering them on. The moment Suhi arrived, Xian rushed over to greet her, beaming. Suhi was about to ask Xian how training had been going when Ian suddenly squeezed in between them. "Don't worry, Suhi. I'll dedicate the victory to you." Suhi quickly nodded and at the same time noticed Heli walking over. Heli said they would give everything they had. For Suhi, hearing that, Suhi's face flushed red. Then an irritated voice cut in. "Staying here is dangerous, you shouldn't come." Suhi smiled softly. "So Solon, are you worried I might get hurt?" Solon clearly hadn't expected her to say that. He turned his head away, flustered. "That's not it. That if you're here we'll be distracted. It'll affect the match." Suhi kept smiling. "So, you do care about me then?" Solon's face flushed instantly, leaving him momentarily speechless. "Solon, after practice is over, can we talk for a bit?" The sudden invitation stirred an unfamiliar, subtle feeling in him. When practice ended, he still showed up at the flower bed as promised. He asked stiffly, "Why did you call me here?" Suhi gave an awkward smile. "Why didn't you change before coming?" Solon cut her off. "Get to the point." Hearing that, Suhi stopped stalling. "There are two things I wanted to say. Thank you, and I'm sorry, especially to you. I heard that the others didn't know you could turn into a werewolf before. They found out because you saved me that day." Solon didn't let her finish. "I only transformed because that guy was disgusting. It had nothing to do with you." "But who exactly is that guy? Why did he take you away?" Suhi lowered her head. "I don't know either. Chris was my only friend when I was a child, and I don't know why he became like that, or why he took me. Now I'm scared he'll show up again, but at the same time I feel pathetic for thinking that, because he was once my most precious friend." Hearing this, Solon raised a question. "Could it be that you mistook him for someone else? Maybe they just look alike?" Suhi shook her head. "But he knew a secret that only Chris and I knew. I've never told anyone else." "Well, I mentioned it once to Healy, but no one besides him." Suddenly, Suhi remembered something. Chris had appeared in her dream before, and in order to make him recognize her, she had revealed that secret. The realization sent a chill through her. Seeing Solon's confusion, Suhi explained further. "I sometimes have extremely vivid dreams, so vivid that I can even remember the sensations and the smells." Solon's expression grew serious. "Are you sure that was really a dream?" The question stunned Suhi, and she recalled something Chris once said to her when they were children. "I heard you moved houses many times. You never went out during the day, but at night you'd wander around on your own." But the more she thought about it, the less it made sense. That if it were sleepwalking, the timing didn't match, and there was no way she could have reached the seaside that fast. The more she thought, the more afraid she became, yet she still couldn't find an answer. Seeing this, Solon told her not to dwell on it. "If that guy shows up again, no, if he shows up, we won't let him get away." Suhi looked at Solon with gratitude. "Thank you, Solon, back then, and now." Solon's face flushed again, but he hurriedly urged her to go inside and get some rest. Only after she left did he let out a breath, muttering softly, "Why did you come to another school, and at a time like this?"